Hit like and subscribe. You're watching the Marc Lamont Hill official YouTube channel.
Peace, family. This is your brother, Marc Lamont Hill. Welcome to Night School. Every night here on the Marc Lamont Hill official YouTube channel, we hold Night School. Where we discuss the most interesting topics, the most engaged debates, the most interesting subjects going on in the world today. And tonight is no different. We got a lot of cool stuff to talk about. Obviously, the Diddy trial started, and that is probably for the next few months going to be the biggest thing on the pop culture scene. That is also going to be something that's going to traverse the legal community, the pop culture community, just the nosy community, everybody. So we're going to get into that. But as always, we're not going to talk about it as a tawdry pop culture story, but instead we're going to talk about it in the context of how we think about gender, how we think about sexuality, how we think about the law, how we think about some of these issues that really don't get talked about significantly, at least not mainstream corporate media. Donald Trump had a little contretemps, I'm going to say, with Benjamin Netanyahu. And of course, Church nukes white refugee plan. You see that in the headlines. We'll get into what that all means. I know I sound really stuffy, y'all. I'm dealing with a sinus infection, and I apologize for starting late. I'm trying to literally get myself clear enough that y'all can hear me and that I'm not sniffling and sneezing the entire time. So that's part of the problem too. But before we do any of that, I'm blessed to be joined. You saw him for half a second when the screen jumped up. He is, I think, one of the most interesting, thoughtful, change-minded, pragmatic, but not narrow-minded leaders of our generation. He is the national director of the Working Families Party, and he is a movement strategist. He's a leader, and he is part of a push right now to help us reimagine and rethink how we go about navigating the electoral system. You know, it's one thing to say we want to vote a certain way. It's one thing to say we're going to choose this party or that party, all of which is important. But it's equally important to think about what kind of candidates we run. And Maurice Mitchell is here to help us think about how we could create a system and help reshape the system in such a way that we get actual everyday people, working class people, grassroots people in the electoral process. So I want to bring him on right now so that we can talk a little bit about this stuff. Maurice, my brother, so good to see you.
It's good to be here, my brother. And, you know, just props to your perseverance getting over an ailment and still holding night school. That shows dedication, my brother. So thanks for continuing to educate all of us. It's so good to be with you.
Oh man, thank you. And you're a New Yorker too.
I am a born and raised New Yorker.
I see people. I see trolls are in the building mentioning that the Knicks won tonight. So that angers me a little bit. So I'm going to be even more worse than the sinus infection is knowing that the Knicks won. Talk to me about these. Talk to me about these elections. What you have so many things going on, but one of the real serious initiatives you have is really thinking about the kind of candidates we run.
Yes. You know, to my fellow New Yorkers, 3-1. Let's bring it home. And to everybody else, back to the topic at hand. So look, our political, I don't need to tell you, Mark, that our political system in the United States is troubled, deeply troubled. And there's many reasons. There's not one reason for it. But one of the things that I find appalling is most people in Congress, for example, are millionaires with a law degree, right? So if you think about all of the issues that Congress has to deal with, issues dealing with taxation, issues dealing with education, issues dealing with whether or not our government is going to offer relief around debt, all of these issues, these are working class issues, but working class people aren't dealing with them. we think that that's fundamentally problematic. At the Working Families Party, we believe that in a democracy, and I know it's crazy, especially now, it sounds crazy, but in a democracy, the people, everyday people, should govern, not corporations, not billionaires. And so what we're doing is we're doing our largest candidate drive in history, where we are recruiting from the grassroots in every corner of the country 1,000 working class candidates. And we primarily are looking for these candidates to run for local office because, Mark, as you know, so much governing, so many of the issues that we care most about happen on the local level. And there's so many seats. Not only are there city council seats and school board seats, there's fire board seats, there's water board seats. There's so many of these seats that have real power. Oftentimes, some of these seats decide whether or not big corporations could be able to exploit land and, pollute the air and pollute the water in your community. Of course, school board, there's reasons why the ultra far right white Christian nationalist organization Moms for Liberty flooded all of these school boards. And once they did that, they began to take away things like Black history, and they began to ban books, right? We know that city council, when you're talking about zoning, right? Whether or not we have more affordable housing, right? Critical things. One of the reasons why in the city of Philadelphia, which is a city I know you live in, why the Working Families Party spent so much energy electing Kendra Brooks and Nicholas O'Rourke so that we could pass legislation like the Power Act, which just recently passed, which gives the city of Philadelphia's Board of Labor more power to be able to hold employers accountable, especially the employers that are employing domestic workers who often don't get the services and often get exploited by their employers, right? That is a critical new law that is supporting working class people that was passed on the city council level. We need 100 more Kendra Brooks and 200 more Nicholas O'Rourke's and other working class people who aren't bought for by the corporate lobbies. And so if anybody in your audience has ever thought, maybe I should run, or if anybody in your audience has ever thought, I'm fed up with those people doing those things, I want to encourage them to run. And if you don't mind, I'd like to just ask anybody in your audience you could just pick up your phone and text the word run to 30403, right? When we're watching the richest man on earth dismantle and capture our government, and today is the day when white South African quote unquote refugees were welcomed to our country. If we want to reverse that, we have to start governing as working people. And it doesn't just start in Congress, it has to happen on the local level. And we have to do it county by county by county, town by town by town, city by city. And so that's what we're doing at the Working Families Party.
Now, just so I got that right, you said text run to 30403?
That's correct. That's correct.
All right, Joe. Now, you picked the right audience because there's a bunch of people in my audience who certainly have a mind toward organizing, a mind toward social change, a mind toward engaging the political system in a variety of ways. And most of them broke. So, they fit the definition of the working class. I think that's exciting to think about in a lot of ways. What are some of the barriers to getting working class people in these places like city council? You said a very provocative thing. You said a lot of these people in Congress in particular are sort of billionaires or millionaires, with law degrees. I think you're right. But how does that happen? So I'm asking you a couple of questions. First, the problem that you identify on the congressional level, is it the same on the local level? Are city councils still overrepresented by people in a different class status?
Yeah, there's a number of reasons for it. And a lot of them are structural. So most elected offices don't come with a salary or a significant salary. It's a lot of work, right? And it either doesn't come with a salary or a significant salary. Most elected offices don't come with a lot of staff people who can help you, or maybe you have to share one staff person with many elected offices, but you don't have your own, right? So now, if you're a wealthy person and you already have a lot of resources or you have a lot of support, then the idea of taking on all the work of a local office without getting supported in that way, without getting a meaningful wage, that doesn't seem as impossible. But if you're a working class person and you're already juggling debt, you're already juggling the bills, the idea of taking on something that is sometimes all consuming, like a local seat, it might be a school board, might be a city council, in some states, the state legislature, it doesn't come with a lot of money. It might be a state legislature seat. It's just like not viable for a lot of working people. So usually the wealthy are the people who see that as their pipeline to other offices. So that's number one. Number two, it costs money. You have to spend money on mail, on maybe TV ads, on all of the things that makes a campaign. And you have to do a lot of fundraising. And wealthy people generally know other wealthy people. And so there's that fundraising advantage. The other thing is, there is sort of like a clique, like an old boys club. There is a pipeline, and that pipeline is protected. And usually there's a pipeline from elite schools and elite law schools and many other places into, places like the Kennedy School and other, elite schools of public administration, to getting an elite position on the Hill. Maybe you're on the Hill or in another position, and you're interning, and then eventually you work your way up. That pipeline, a lot of working class people don't know anything about that pipeline and won't access that pipeline because it begins at an elite school, right? And so if there aren't institutions like the Working Families Party that are creating new pipelines, that are connecting directly with working class people and saying, hey, it's actually, you shouldn't be ashamed because you're a working class person, or because you're juggling your bills, or because you're trying to make ends meet. That's a lot of us. That's all of us.
So what exactly do you all do? So I see people writing in the comments right now. People like Gia Brewer here, who says, I would like to run for office in my state. And Gia, let us know what state you're writing in from. But if someone like Gia says, look, I want to run for office in my state, and let's say Gia faces the problems that you raise, you can't afford to quit your day job if you're in a city or state where the city public office doesn't pay. She's in California, I believe, and then you got, like you said, a lack of resources, lack of infrastructure, all of these things. They go and they come to you, yes, and they say, how can I want to do this? What's going to happen?
So we try to lower as many of those barriers as possible, right? So we provide trainings for absolutely free, top level trainings from soup to nut, so that, because we want to demystify the idea of running for office, and we want to make it as simple and as easy for working people to understand. And so when you text RUN to 30403, we're going to invite you into virtual trainings in states like California, where that sister was lives. We actually have a California Working Families Party. So in that state where we actually have a chapter, we'll connect you with one of our organizers, and we will walk you through the process of running for office, or learning the best way to run for office is actually to work on somebody's campaign. And
yes,
we have so many campaigns for you to work on. So one of the things that we try to caution people about, like sometimes people are like, I want to run for Congress. I was like, well, maybe you first go through one of our trainings. After that, you work on somebody's campaign, right? And you develop those.
Why is that important? Particularly when people see, we've seen people, like Cori Bush or AOC or others sort of ascend, relatively quickly into these major congressional seats, and from the outside in, it looks like these are people who came from the bleachers right into the game and starting spot. What do you say?
I think it's so important that our people learn how to govern by learning on the hyper local level, and they learn how to govern by being in movements, in social movements, where they learn how to be accountable to one another. I think it's important to develop those skills through organizing on the ground, develop those skills through supporting others to run, and develop those skills through running on the most local level possible, like a fireball, a board, or a school board. And when you develop those skills of figuring out how to negotiate with people who may not agree with you on a school board or a fire board, and you build a coalition that supports you and flanks you, and then you're able to take that to city council, and then you hone your skills further, and then you're able to take that to Congress. That means that you're bringing a movement with you. One of the things that I find sometimes is that when people go from 0 to 100 and they attempt to run for Congress before they hit all those other steps, is that, number one, running is really challenging. Number two, you need to actually take the time over years to build that solid coalition. And so my preference for folks who want to run is like slow cook it, develop your skills, develop those networks, develop those relationships, develop the muscle for governing on the local level. And even before you run, develop the ability to govern with others through being part of an organization, being part of a grassroots organization, and then supporting others to run. There's a process to it. So I encourage people who are really interested in running, get your reps in through all those things. I think it's critical. So like I said before, like, we lower the barriers of entry by providing those trainings for free. And then we also help people understand, like, for example, fundraising could be really intimidating. And we help people understand that as a working class person, all right, you're not going to fundraise from all these corporations. You're not going to fundraise from all your wealthy friends. However, if you think about your entire life, we have people write out your life list. If you think about all your relationships, as working class people, our relational capital is the most powerful capital. When you actually break it down, you'll realize, man, I'm 1, 2, 3 degrees of separation from enough resources where I could get the ball rolling. And instead of dialing for dollars with, the real estate lobby, I'm going to call everybody I ever went to school with. I'm going to call everybody from my mama's church. I'm going to call every cousin. And then that's how working class people, through our relationships, through our community, I'm going to call everybody I've ever organized with on all these campaigns. I'm going to call everybody that I'm on the front lines of this education fight or this racial justice fight with, and we're going to build a movement. And the other piece of that is that when you're calling all of those people, and they're not nameless, faceless corporations, they're people who you fought with side by side in your community, people who know you, who love you, then they're going to show up in your campaign. So by doing that grassroots fundraising, you're also campaigning, you're also building that movement that you're going to need to win that election. And then if you win, also to govern.
How do these people in your program have to run as Working Families Party?
So Working Families Party, as you know, we have ballot access in New York and Connecticut, which means we're a independent third party where you could vote on the ballot in those places. In places like Philadelphia, we have 2 working families only city council people. But in other places, we recruit people to run in either nonpartisan elections. So there's plenty of nonpartisan elections, especially on the local level. Or we recruit people to run in Democratic primaries often, where we're either challenging a Democrat because they're a corporate Democrat, or there's an open seat. So that's generally how we recruit our people.
And so I guess I'm asking for the person who's less familiar with you guys, because what they're thinking is like, what's in it for you guys? Right? Why are you doing this? And so I want them to understand sort of what the exchange is, sort of what's at stake, and also what you have to do.
Yeah, it's a great question. The Working Families Party, we started 26 years ago through a coalition of grassroots organizations and labor organizations. And we came together because those organizations had historically, like, I was born in 1979. I remember growing up this idea that the Republican Party was the party of the country club and the Democratic Party was the party of the workers. And that began to shift over the years. And it notably shifted during the Clinton years when the WFP was born. because there are folks in labor that felt so disrespected by the Democrats because they were triangulating. What I mean by that is that they were cribbing many of the economic issues and some of the social issues from the Republicans and making it their own, and basically playing in the faces of labor organizations and working people, and basically, getting in bed in a deep way with Wall Street. And so those labor institutions and grassroots organizations started the Working Families Party as a rebuke of the Democratic Party and of their I would say addiction to Wall Street money and those policies. And 26 years later, and that was the era of NAFTA, and the era of the crime bill, and the era of the quote unquote welfare reform, right? And it's interesting because the folks who developed and started Working Families Party 26 years ago were very prescient, because at the time that NAFTA was inked, people said that this will gut our communities. People said that this would create a generation of despair in a lot of the communities that depended on these industrial jobs, and really hurt labor unions and hurt working people. And when you put a map on all of those former industrial cores and all of those jobs that have been, that have now been outsourced to other countries, a lot of those communities, they've become quote unquote Trump country, right? And those working class people, they were abandoned by the Democratic Party. And so the purpose of the WFP is to create a politics that puts at the center the needs of working people and not the needs of Wall Street. We've been around for 26 years as a community and labor coalition, and as a bottom-up third party, shining a light on those issues. And so we've been on these streets, and we have a lot of receipts in terms of the type of politics that we're trying to advance. And our belief is, at the end of the day, we shouldn't be surprised that the policies again and again and again, and of course, Republicans, the current Republican Party is the party of far right fascist white Christian nationalists. But the Democratic Party, because so many of these folks are coming from these very moneyed pipelines, we shouldn't be surprised that when push comes to shove, they're not fighting for the interests of working people, which is why we need a third force in American politics. And the way that we build that, at least this is what the Working Families Party believes, the way that we build that is from the grassroots, county by county, city by city, and election by election. And if we do that systematically over time, things will change.
For sure. Before you go, I want to ask you about that, because that's a point that, comes up often when it comes to the Green Party, of which I've been a member for 25 years now. And, one of the criticisms that we receive oftentimes is that we're only concerned with sort of intervening every 4 years. Now, I don't think that's fair. I think there's lots of ways that the Green Party has been very active every year. And I think that we sort of understate how actively the Democrats work to remove the Green Party on local ballots, et cetera, et cetera. I can go down the list about the Green Party, but I guess my question is this initiative a way for you all to ensure that you don't just pop up every 4 years? Is it a way of involving is it part of a different strategy for how to expand and ultimately produce a non-corporate presidential candidate down the road, as well as change day-to-day politics everywhere?
At the Working Families Party, we believe there are no guarantees and there are no shortcuts. I've spent my entire life organizing, and the lesson that I learn again and again and again is that there are no shortcuts. And this is true for figuring out how we get out of the entrenched corporate politics that we find ourselves in, and also the politics of the oligarchs, the unmasked oligarchs who, maybe a few years ago they masked themselves, and now, Elon is just running around and blatantly calling it like it is, that this entire democracy has been captured by capital, by big money, right? We believe that there isn't a easy or quick or fast or special, or there's no hack to get out of that. that will only happen, it can happen, if working people come together and fight for it over time and systematically. We have to campaign and we have to contest for every election in every locality, in every state, in every county in this country. There's no quick path to it. And so the Working Families Party, our strategy is based on this idea that working people can win. We can win hard elections. It's not easy, but our focus is on winning elections and governing. There's many different parties. There's many different third parties, like you mentioned, and each third party has its own strategy that's based on its own ideology and own framework. The WFP strategy is based on winning elections, and not just winning to govern, and then building on those governing wins, so that working people actually can feel some relief. Like, we deliver for working people. Like I mentioned just recently, Kendra Brooks passed the Power Act, like maybe like a week or two ago, in Philly City Council. That's just one legislative victory of many that Kendra and Nicholas and many others through the Working Families Party we passed. But that demonstrates the ability to win elections, govern, and then deliver relief for working people, and then do it again. We believe like that over time challenges the cynicism that many people have earned rightfully, that politics don't matter, that there's nothing you could do about it, that there's no way, that we can't win. To us, the way that we challenge that cynicism isn't necessarily by Working Families Party running a presidential candidate, every 4 years, but by running on the local level, winning, and then delivering and building on that. And, over time, we've shown again and again and again, from state legislatures to city councils, and we're growing. We recently just chartered our Arizona party. We recently just chartered an organizing committee in Michigan. So we're growing. And over time, we're proving that this slow, steady, clear, disciplined route of building bottom-up third-party power is, for us, the way to go.
It makes a lot of sense for all the reasons. Maurice, how else can people connect with you? How else can they support you and the work you're doing? I know you said to text RUN to 30403. What else should people do?
Folks could also, I'm on all social media and I'm very accessible. And my DMs are open. Folks could find me. I'm at Maurice WFP on all social media. So folks could find me there. Definitely, if you're interested in running, text RUN to 30403. And if you're interested in any way in getting involved or learning more about the Working Families Party, reach out to us. We're at Working Families on all social media, or reach out to me directly, and I'll be happy to direct you to the right place, the right organizer, the right assignment.
Do you have time for one more question? I have a question coming in from someone in our community, and I think it's an interesting one. Bill at the Money, one of our OGs here, says, "Sincerely, I want to trust the Working Families Party, but how can we when they keep aligning with Democrats on the biggest stages? I appreciate the small wins, but the big betrayal hurt." What do you say to that?
That's a great question, and I'd love to go back and forth and struggle with that person. But what I would say is that, like last election, again, claim no easy victories, tell no lies. Last election, it was a binary choice between Donald Trump and Kamala Harris. And the election before that was a binary choice between Donald Trump and Biden.
And to be clear, all these elections are binary choices, right? You're not saying there's nothing unique about these. You think presidential elections are binary choices?
Yes.
Okay.
And so we, as the Working Families Party, believe that it's our job. We're not Democrats. I'm not a registered Democrat. We believe that it's our job to tell the people the truth about that, and also to tell the people the truth about the fact that on the presidential level, there are differences between Democrats and Republicans, and those differences are significant enough that we should weigh in on that, because they have real outcomes for working people. That does not mean we agree with all the policies of the Democratic Party, but the way that I look at it is that the Democratic Party, like if we were a parliamentary system, the Democratic Party would probably be 3 or 4 parties, right? But because we have such a rigid 2-party system, you have the Democrats and the Republicans. Inside the Democratic Party, there's a faction of people who are aligned with all the issues of the Working Families Party. When we instruct people to vote for the Democrat, what we're saying is that this party is the party that includes a lot of bullshit, but also includes people who are fighters like Ilhan Omar and Rashida Tlaib and others who are fighters for working people. And we want them to govern. And we're the party that supports that factions of the Democrats. It's a very nuanced and often a very hard pill to swallow. But to us, it's the truth. And my job as an organizer is always to tell the people the truth.
She just had one response, or at least one. She says, only if winning is the objective. If winning is the objective, is it a binary? If we want change, we have to expand and let a third party breathe. In other words, there were third party options that were available. Yes, to your point, that a third party option would likely make Trump more likely to win, not less, unless you're picking a third party that's on to the right of Trump. So, yeah, it's a binary choice if your primary concern is defeating Trump. If your primary concern is actually holding these parties accountable, making them pay for the choices they made or didn't make, then suddenly you have more options. What do you say to that?
Oh, I mean, I think that is a fair critique. One I humbly have some difference with. I believe that the primary contradiction in this moment, this historical moment, is our fight against global fascism. And global far-right fascist parties and movements, not just in the United States, around the world, over the past 10 years have chosen to come out of the shadows and come out of the fringes of the conservative movement and to seize governing power. And they've chosen, this isn't just a US phenomenon, this is a global far-right oligarchic strategy of taking state power. And I think it's critical for working people in this country and all around the world to make a decision as to whether or not the most far-right regime in this country takes power over the wealthiest, richest country in the history of countries. I think that's a critical question. It's not a theoretical question. It's a very rooted, grounded question that has very clear material outcomes for working people in this country and around the world. And so I do think that winning matters and that blocking the right wing is a win. The blocking of the right wing's takeover of the federal government is a win for working people. It creates an opportunity to mitigate the harm. And we've already seen over a little bit more than 100 days of Trump's presidency, the clear harm that would only come from a Trump presidency animated by Elon Musk, MAGA, and Project 2025, right? And so I do think it's important, and I don't think it's a theoretical thing. And I'm proud of the work that we did in order to defeat Trump at the top of the ticket. Now, what I would say about these other options, I want to live in a world where there's a multi-party democracy in this country. I think that's the only way where there's a true viable multi-party democracy, and we have more choices for president than we do for yogurt, right? I think it's crazy that you could just go to the store and get any type of yogurt and you have two choices for president. I agree. And again, there are no easy victories. There are no shortcuts. What we need to do is to build a grassroots movement in order to structurally change the structure of our democracy. And we support multi-member districts. We support fusion voting, which allows us to be on the ballot in Connecticut and New York. And I agree with the respondent. I couldn't agree more that the two-party system and only having two choices of president is one of the most frustrating anti-democratic features of living in this country. And it also is a reality today of living in this country until we organize to change it.
Well, I'm going to have to let that be the last word there on that question. But it's a heck of a thought to wrestle with. But as we're wrestling with that, there's practical work that needs to be done, and you're doing it. And we're excited about that. And we want to support you. So everybody, make sure that you text RUN to 30403. Reach out to our brother, Maurice Mitchell, at Maurice WFP. You see it on the screen there under his face. And let's keep building, man. We have so much work to do. I want to make sure we get there. So thank you, Maurice. You're always welcome here. You know, night school is home.
Appreciate you, good brother. Take care.
Always. All right, family. That was Maurice Mitchell. Now, I know some of y'all came here to talk about the Working Families Party, to talk about electoral integrity. Others of y'all came for the smoke about Diddy. So we're going to get to all of that in just a second. Before we get to Diddy, just a couple quick headlines that I know we need to talk about, that I know we need to cover. Let's start here with Donald Trump snubbing Netanyahu. Is that right? Is it true? President Trump is leaving Israel off of his first Middle East trip since returning to the White House. And Trump's envoy, Steve Witkoff, told hostage families this week that Israel's government is dragging out the Gaza war, even though, here's the interesting part, even though they say the U.S. wants to end it. That's right. Witkoff said Israel is slowing down a deal that would bring American and Israeli hostages home. Now, Trump is not openly attacking Israel, but his recent moves do show a sharp change in U.S. policy. He cut a ceasefire deal with Iran-backed Houthi rebels in Yemen, even after the missiles hit Israel's main airport. Now, Trump also dropped U.S. demands linking Saudi Arabia's nuclear plan to making peace with Israel. Netanyahu's coalition, made up of far-right parties, is pushing to keep the war going. But more than 2/3 of Israelis, according to polls, want the war to end if it means that they get all the hostages home, which the Knesset puts at the bottom. The Knesset is Israel's Senate or legislative body, Congress. The Knesset puts it at the bottom of its priorities. Now, Trump is signaling that he won't let Netanyahu's political fights stop him from making deals in the region. He's expected to visit Saudi Arabia, Qatar, and the United Arab Emirates later this week, skipping Israel, a move that would have been rendered unthinkable just a few years ago by a United States president. But Trump's allies say he's not against Israel, but he sees Netanyahu as a problem, not a partner. That seems like the first big fragmentation in their relationship. The bromance is ending, y'all. I promise you. Not as fast as I'd like, but ultimately these egos are going to bump heads the same way I would argue Elon Musk and Donald Trump are going to bump heads. So it'll be interesting to watch, but please pay attention to what has happened and what is happening. Donald Trump traveling to the Middle East and not stopping in Israel, not centering Israel, very, very important information. It's also interesting to see as Donald Trump is traveling the Arab world and these wedges are being sort of drawn or placed between the United States and Israel. It'd be interesting to see how that affects the political choices that other nations make. You know, how closely do you embrace Saudi Arabia now? You know, and if the condition of Gaza is not a determining factor on how to engage Israel, then suddenly all kinds of things are open that weren't before. So we'll keep following this, and we'll give you some deep insights, hopefully, about what's going on as soon as we have more information. All right, y'all. There is a Diddy story that I know y'all been wanting to talk about. Before we get to that, the Episcopal Church, they are breaking off a 40-year partnership with the United States government, all because it refuses to help resettle white South African refugees who were, let's just say, fast-tracked. Is that the right word? Is that the right word? Fast-tracked? Is that the right word? Yeah. Fast-tracked by President Trump. Church leaders say that Trump's refugee policy favors white Afrikaners while shutting out Black and brown refugees who have been waiting for years inside of camps and even full-out war zones. This is the reality that we're talking about here. The church says that this move betrays its mission of racial justice and its long ties to South Africa's anti-apartheid movement. And it's important to stress that because there's a very vibrant anti-apartheid struggle going on to this day. Presiding Bishop Sean Rose said Monday the church won't be a system or part of a system that jumps white South Africans ahead of refugees from places like Sudan, refugees from places like Congo, where people are still facing war and genocide. The church will stop taking federal money for refugee resettlement at the end of the year. And that's an important piece, except for the fact that Trump is doubling down. He claims white Southern farmers are victims of genocide, even though South African courts and police say that it's a made-up story. Still, Trump's plan pushes white South Africans to the front of the refugee line. At the same time, by pushing them to the front, it leaves behind persecuted Christians, Afghans who helped U.S. troops, and others in life or death situations. Now, there's a clear contradiction here, right? I mean, a clear contradiction here, except Donald Trump don't really care about the contradictions. He runs toward them. But here's exactly what y'all's president said with regard to these contradictions. Check this out.
Dozens of Afrikaners who claim discrimination in their home country are heading to the United States, where your administration is going to welcome them as refugees. Now, this comes as you've halted virtually all refugee admissions for people fleeing famine and war from countries like Sudan and the Democratic Republic of Congo. Why are you creating an expedited path into the country for Afrikaners but not others?
Because they're being killed, and we don't want to see people be killed. Now, South Africa leadership is coming to see me, I understand, sometime next week. And, we're supposed to have I guess a G20 meeting there or something, but we're having a G20 meeting. I don't know how we can go unless that situation's taken care of, but it's a genocide that's taking place that you people don't want to write about, but it's a terrible thing that's taking place. And farmers are being killed. They happen to be white, but whether they're white or black makes no difference to me, but white farmers are being brutally killed, and their land is being confiscated in South Africa. And the newspapers and the media, television media, doesn't even talk about it. If it were the other way around, they talk about it. That would be the only story they talk about. And I don't care who they are. I don't care about their race, their color. I don't care about their height, their weight. I don't care about anything. I just know that what's happening is terrible. I have people that live in South Africa. They say it's a terrible situation taking place. So we've essentially extended citizenship to those people to escape from that violence and come here. Yeah.
So Donald Trump, it's fascinating too. The race doesn't matter, but I'm going to tell you 4 times they're white. Anyway, critics say it's racial favoritism, simple and plain. And now one of the oldest and most powerful churches in America is deciding they're not going to play along. They're just instead going to walk away. I'm talking about Church World Service. Another Christian group says it will serve all refugees, including the Afrikaners, but warns that the system is being twisted to favor a select few. This is the latest clash between Trump and the White House, or Trump's White House and the church, really. And for many Black Americans, it's a reminder of who gets prioritized, who gets left behind, and who America is really opening its doors for. Wow, y'all. Your brother here is going through it. I'm not feeling great, but I seem to be feeling worse, and the hiccups are coming and the sinus infection. Oh my gosh. I don't know what's going on, man. This ain't my night. But let's move on to the story that a lot of y'all showed up for. The Diddy case. This Diddy case just hit a whole new level of nasty. That's all I can say. A whole new level of nasty. A male, oh man, day one. I'm sorry. Let me just start over, y'all, because this hiccup is maybe. This Diddy case just hit a whole new level of nasty. Day one of the federal sex trafficking case got underway today, and a male sex worker told the court that Sean Diddy Combs paid him thousands of dollars to have sex with Cassie Ventura, his former partner, while Diddy sat back in the room and got off watching. Daniel Phillips said it started at a bachelorette party at New York's Gramercy Park Hotel. He says that Cassie asked him for a massage, and Diddy, hiding behind a robe, a hat, and a bandana, sat in the corner watching and pleasuring himself. Philip told jurors that he was paid up to $6,000 a pop. $6,000 a pop. No pun intended, to sleep with Cassie while Diddy gave orders. And sometimes Diddy would film the whole thing. And it got darker. Cassie allegedly asked him to urinate on her, and Diddy corrected him when he, quote, was doing it wrong. Philip says the whole thing messed with his head and his body, especially after he saw Diddy get violent with Cassie. That, he said, left him with erectile dysfunction for the first time in his life. This trial is blowing the lid off of what prosecutors call Diddy's freak-offs, which were wild, controlled sex parties where the power imbalance was deadly serious. Diddy is facing many charges, including sex trafficking, racketeering, and moving people across state lines to engage in prostitution. Now, if Diddy is convicted, he could be looking at life behind bars. If he's convicted of everything, I mean. Cassie herself is set to testify tomorrow after already setting off a firestorm last year with her bombshell lawsuit accusing Combs of rape, abuse, and trafficking. So right now, Diddy's locked up in that Brooklyn prison, but the world is watching and information is coming out. There's so much here. First, the jury was selected. No surprise there. We knew that was going to happen. We knew opening arguments were going to happen today, but we're here. There was a chance that they wouldn't find the right jury, but they were able to do so. Next, for the prosecution, starting the trial off with the male sex worker, it's an interesting choice. I mean, it makes sense. It's smart. It's wise on the one hand, but on the other hand, it's the question of why. Like, why would you do that? And again, I'm not saying they're wrong. I'm just asking why. Obviously, he has information. He gives a window into Diddy's life, Diddy's mind, Diddy's imagination, etc. But he also plays on some of the more salacious parts of the whole story. I mean, obviously, people are homophobic. People are shocked, even if they're not homophobic, that Diddy was engaged in these kinds of sex acts. So this really sets a table for viewing Diddy through the lens of sexual perversion. I'm not saying that any of these things are perverted. I'm saying that that's how a lot of people will frame it. And if they make Diddy into a freak, then that could change how the jury sees him. They could now not trust Diddy. They could see him as a problem that needs to be solved, juridic, through the legal system, etc. Or it could play into the defense's argument, which is Diddy, as he said in the opening statement, Diddy's a complicated man, but this case isn't complicated. And so just make it seem like he's just a freak ball, right? He's just somebody who likes to have sex with anybody and everybody, and it just got carried away, or not even carried away. It just was what it was, but there was no coercion, there was no harm. That's going to be their argument. So both could stand to see progress or a few steps back based on how people interpret the witness. Now, Cassie as witness is going to be damning for Diddy. This is a stiff blow. It could be a knockout punch. Won't be because of his legal team, but it's going to be a hard thing to come back from. I can guarantee you about that. Diddy's case is going to come down ultimately to whether the jury wants to let him off or not. It's not going to be some overwhelming presentation of facts that make people say, "Oh, that guy definitely did it," or that he didn't. It's going to be ultimately sort of who do you want to blame for this? How do you want to see this go down? It's pretty much going to be that. We'll keep covering this every day, but please understand, starting with the freak offs, the urination, the consensual sex with Cassie, all that. That's not doing the prosecution any favors. But Diddy having this whole mess in front of him may not do him any. So it's going to be a long time, days, if not weeks, before we figure out exactly how that went. Anyway, y'all, thank you for watching Night School. I apologize for coughing and hiccuping so much, and I apologize for being off camera a bit more than normal, but I'm having difficulty breathing. I'm not feeling great. This infection is not doing well for me. So I'm going to cut out. But hit that like button, hit that subscribe button. If you're so inclined, hit the join button and become a monthly paid subscriber to the channel. If you can't do that, please use Cash App, PayPal, Venmo, or Zelle. Drop something in for your boy. I don't care if it's $1 or if it's $1 million. I'll be just as grateful. But I could use your support, so please consider dropping something in our coffers tonight. Anyway, family, I'll see you soon. We'll talk later. Peace.